As we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on the Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Federal Reserve appears to be creeping closer to an outcome that its own staff economists viewed as unlikely just 6 months ago. That is, lowering inflation back to a normal range without plunging the economy into a recession. Plenty could still go wrong, but inflation has come down notably in recent months. It's running at 3.1% on a yearly basis. Now that's down from a 9.1% peak in 2022. At the same time, growth is solid. Consumers are spending and employers continue to hire. Israeli Defense Minister said today that the war against Hamas will last more than several months, signaling a determination to carry on with the bombardment of Gaza, even as the White House National Security Advisor arrived in Tel Aviv to discuss a timetable for ending the fighting. And last year, private donations to U.S. colleges and universities totaled $59.5 billion, and that was up from about $14.8 billion during the 1980 and 81 school year. Now, there's a new class of donors who are often in the prime of their careers, having amassed fortunes in finance or tech, who are more outspoken about politics and willing to wage war on social media to affect change. These donors are engaging in pressure campaigns and using kind of a winner-take-all Wall Street investment strategies, threatening to pull their money from schools that have become increasingly beholden to their largest donors. We saw that in the case of Harvard, University of Penn, and MIT. And House Republicans voted yesterday to formally authorize an impeachment inquiry against President Biden in an effort to strengthen their oversight powers. That's what they are saying, as Republican lawmakers continue to investigate the Biden's family finances. Republicans have not said what alleged crimes they would try to impeach Biden for, and they haven't shown any evidence that he benefited financially from his son Hunter's foreign deals. The Senate yesterday overwhelmingly passed an $886 billion defense bill that would set Pentagon policy and provide a 5.2% pay raise for military personnel. Now, in doing so, they defied the demands of Republicans who failed to attach a raft of deeply partisan restrictions on abortion, transgender care, and diversity initiatives. Republicans are also battling to hold on to the New York House seat vacated by George Santos. They chose another relatively unknown candidate with a remarkable biography, but a thin political resume to run in a special election next year. After extensive vetting, Republican leaders selected Mazi Melissa Philip, a local legislator who was born in Ethiopia, who served as a paratrooper in the Israel Defense Forces and who ran for office for the first time in 2021, vowing to fight anti-Semitism. This is Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. And this is the second hour of Areva Martin in Real Time, and this is the hour where we dig a little deeper, where we go behind the headlines, and we bring you those stories that people are talking about, as well as those stories that are likely to have a tremendous impact on the lives of everyday people. And today, those stories that are going to have a just gigantic impact on all of our lives are those cases that the U.S. Supreme Court have decided that they want to take up in this new Supreme Court term. One of the cases in particular involving abortion medication potentially pits the U.S. Supreme Court against the FDA and pits the Supreme Court against its own decision in Dobbs, the decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, where the court said the decision about abortion should be made by states. Well, in this abortion pill case, a certain kind of decision by the Supreme Court could effectively undermine that determination, because if doctors in California are prohibited from sending abortion pills, abortion medication to other states, does that really give each individual state a say over abortion and all kinds of other issues about interstate commerce. Again, FDA approved medication. This case is the first case that the Supreme Court is going to hear around abortion and abortion care since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Also in this term, the Supreme Court has decided that it's going to review the federal prosecution of one of the insurrectionists. You remember those people who were climbing up on the Capitol wall, who were, crashing windows, putting their feet up in Nancy Pelosi's office, creating total havoc as they sought to prevent the legitimate certification of the votes to make Joe Biden the legitimately elected president in 2020. Well, one of those insurrectionists who was charged by the U.S. Attorney's Office is challenging the indictment and the federal statute that was used to indict him on, saying that the U.S. Attorney's Office reading of that statute and even the lower court's reading of the statute is too broad, that this particular statute, federal statute, doesn't give the U.S. Attorney the rights to indict him for the conduct that he engaged in, nor the court to preside over cases brought by the U.S. Attorney on the basis of that federal statute. Now, this case could have ginormous implications because if the Supreme Court rules in favor of this insurrectionist, it might mean that every case brought by the U.S. Attorney against those people engaged in that despicable conduct, those cases may have to be thrown out, and people sitting in jail who were indicted and convicted under this federal statute, they may have the right to be freed from jail. And finally, a decision by the Supreme Court in favor of this insurrectionist could have far-reaching complications or far-reaching consequences, I should say, as it relates to Jack Smith, the special counsel's efforts to hold Donald Trump accountable. Wow. The Supreme Court is going to be busy, and one of my favorite constitutional law professors is going to help us make sense of what is on the plate of the U.S. Supreme Court and how decisions by this court will impact all of our daily lives. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though?
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show.
Our U.S. Supreme Court has been busy, and they've indicated some really significant cases that they are going to take up during this new term. And one of these involves a showdown over abortion pill access. Some folks are saying in this high stakes legal battle, the Biden administration is defending federal approval of the abortion pill mifepristone, including a recent move to make it available by mail. And we know the Supreme Court on yesterday took up this case, and this is going to lead to a definitive decision on whether this drug, most commonly used for medication abortions, will continue to be easily available, including by mail. And here to help us understand how busy our Supreme Court is going to be and how the decisions that they will make will impact all of us is Santa Clara law professor Marjolaine Armstrong. Welcome back to the show, Professor Armstrong. This court, in a normal time, we may say we are excited that the Supreme Court is busy, but given this 6-3 conservative majority court, when they get busy, we should all get worried or be worried, because some of the decisions that this court has already handed down have been catastrophic. They have set women back, they've set people of color back, and it's just been so hard to predict how they will rule. So let's start with this abortion case. This is going to be the first case where the Supreme Court is going to review the issue of abortion since it overturned Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision. So tell us what's at stake in this abortion pill case.
Well, in this case, it's first of all the FDA's approval of the medicine, and then the ability to have that medicine sent across state lines through the mail. And so when the Supreme Court decided Dobbs and left it to the states, it really opened up a can of worms, because you have these issues about interstate commerce and interstate travel. And so a state can outlaw something, but if it's been approved by the federal government, and it's something that's moving from state to state, then states' powers, individual states' powers, can really be limited with respect to being able to bar something that's been federally approved.
Well, let's step back a minute and talk about abortion pills, or this pill in particular that was approved by the FDA. Give us some sense about how readily available the pills are today, how often they are used, and, in what manner are they used?
Well, a number of pharmacies refuse to issue these pills, and they might cite reasons like conscience or the fact that their employees don't want to be involved in this. But because they are available through mail, it's possible for people to get them without necessarily having to go to their pharmacy. So the access to the pills is really going to differ from state to state, from locale to locale, based on whether or not they're being distributed, because you can't make a pharmacy distribute these.
Well, again, I think it's important to note that this is a case that the Biden administration is welcoming the court to weigh in on, because the lower court basically was restricting the use of this pill, the use of it to be sent by mail. So this is a case kind of different from other cases where we've seen these conservative activists taking the lead to get a case before the Supreme Court. This is a challenge by doctors, other medical professionals, and the Biden administration saying courts weigh in, the U.S. Supreme Court weigh in, because we need you to clear up for us what are the abilities of doctors in states to continue to prescribe this medication and to send it to patients in the mail, say perhaps to a state like Texas that has very restrictive abortion bans.
Well, the original case was brought by a group that called themselves doctors for the Hippocratic Oath. That's not exactly what they were named, but they were conservative, anti-abortion activists who wanted to challenge the ability to get these drugs. And so the lower court, in a decision that was just ridiculous, determined that the law was unconstitutional. Well, I'm sorry, was not valid because of its interpretation of these FDA regulations that had been in place for years and years.
Let me stop you. So essentially, you had this very conservative activist nonprofit organization bring the case, and they shopped it. We know they forum shopped. They went to a forum with the judge who they knew had a history of being anti-abortion. So this is a very well thought out, very methodical process that we've seen Republican activists use. We've seen it used in the case of affirmative action, and now obviously in the case of abortion. And basically they find these test cases as a way to get them all the way up to the Supreme Court, knowing or hoping that the Supreme Court is going to rule in their favor and that therefore further restricting people's rights. So again, stepping back to just kind of reset, you have this very conservative nonprofit organization that forum shops to find this very extremist conservative judge to determine that it is illegal, unconstitutional to prescribe this medication that has been approved by the FDA and to send this medication across state lines, even if a doctor has determined that it's medically necessary. So you get this very oppressive lower decision. Right. So first we get the first level. This first court sides with these conservative activists, and then tell us what happens after that.
And then the Court of Appeal found that the case was wrong, and so that's why it's being appealed to the Supreme Court, because the conservative activists want to have the intermediate court's decision overturned.
Right. So now we have the court. Let's go to the U.S. Supreme Court. What are they likely to do? Because you have them deciding in Dobbs that states, Texas, California, New York, you guys fight it out with your state legislatures. You decide if you want a 6-week ban, a 12-week ban, or like California and New York, a 20 or 25-week ban. So women are free to get abortions up, to what people may call even late stage abortions. So now you have the court weighing in and having to determine, can this FDA approved pill be sent across lines? What do you think the court's going to rely on as it looks to make some determination in this case?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that the court has not necessarily, in fact, in overturning Roe, it's been ignoring precedent. And so with respect to how it's going to decide this, it's kind of open. But there are a couple of things that I think the court might be inclined to find that an individual state is still a part of the United States. And so the United States law and the Constitution are the supreme law of the land. And it's an important constitutional principle that individual states shouldn't be interfering with interstate commerce. So those are the arguments in favor of finding the Texas law unconstitutional because it's interfering with interstate commerce. And when the court made the decision in Dobbs in terms of leaving it up to states to make their own decisions about abortion law, it said it was going to make things simpler, but it really just opened up all of these questions, again, about moving from state to state and about state conflicts. And so this is a situation that the Supreme Court created, really, in upholding the challenge in Dobbs. So now you have the federal government in conflict with what a state wants to do, and that how the court's going to address that, I can't predict.
Here's a practical dilemma, obviously. So again, if I am a doctor in California where abortions are legal, and I provide telehealth services to pregnant women all over the country because they are part of, say, some health insurance plan, or I'm a concierge doctor, so I just take private patients and I provide telehealth to them. I have a client that was living in California, or a patient that lives in California, but they're going to go spend some time in Texas. And I meet with them over Zoom, I make a diagnosis, and then I prescribe this pill and send it to them or have it shipped to them by a pharmacy in a state like Texas that has a ban that prevents you from having an abortion after 6 weeks. Doesn't that, in effect, nullify the Texas abortion ban if I'm able to call my doctor in California and have them send me a pill where I can take a medication and have a medically, prescription-induced abortion in Texas?
Well, yeah, I think that a more likely scenario is that you have, say, a college student who's from California who goes to Texas and she brings these pills with her. And so she's possessing something that the state would find illegal. And or a woman decides to go across state lines and get this. So, the transportation through the mail is certainly one thing, but another thing is people crossing state lines and people having prescriptions from one state and then going to a state like Texas.
And we know that happens all the time. People, you board a plane from California and you have diabetes medication, you have heart medication, hypertension medication, and you go spend 3 months in Texas or Florida and you take your medication with you and you take the medication while you're in that state.
Right, exactly. So that's why this is such a huge issue, because it is something that can affect many people, and it affects the ability of people to go from state to state in terms of what they do in their home state is illegal. Now, the thing about the drugs is it's been approved by the federal government. So that has dimension that you don't have in a lot of cases. For example, marijuana is legal in California, but it's not legal for you to take it to Nevada. But marijuana is not approved by the federal government. Here you have an FDA-approved drug. So not only do you have conflicts between state law, but you have a conflict between the state and the federal law. And how the Supreme Court is going to deal with that, generally, it shouldn't be much of a question in terms of the supremacy clause.
Yes, I agree with you, but I am thinking for a court that wanted abortion issues to be decided by the state, if they uphold the rights for doctors to continue to prescribe this FDA-approved medication, and you do have the scenario you just described where I take this drug with me to from California into Texas, I'm 8 weeks pregnant, and I now take this medication and I have an abortion at home, I now have, quote unquote, violated the Texas law, which says you can't get an abortion after 6 weeks. And the state of Texas is no longer quote unquote, in charge of abortion, which was the goal of the Dobbs decision. So how do you reconcile the intent of Dobbs to make this all about states controlling women's health, women's reproductive rights, which is so, anachronistic and onerous in itself. But this decision could allow us to circumvent any state's restrictive abortion laws, because just say, hey, come on to California and get your fill of these pills and take them back to your state.
Well, the pills are supposed to be used early in the pregnancy. I'm not sure, or in fact, I know you can't use them to terminate a pregnancy that is later than, I think, 6 weeks. I'm not sure exactly, but there's the fact that you're supposed to take these early in the pregnancy and then follow them up with a second pill. And so, to some extent, it's not going to make that much of a difference, because after 8 weeks, the pills only work 94% of the time.
That's still a huge percentage of time. 94% are pretty good odds. And in a state like Texas, what we saw with the Attorney General, if you have an abortion in that state one day after you're 6 weeks pregnant, he wants to prosecute you. So, that week or two difference for someone like Ken Paxton and someone, like him in other states, they would go to bat and fight that. I mean, we know they would fight it. When we come forward, we've got to continue this conversation about the complete chaos and mess that the Supreme Court has made on the issue of abortion, but also talk about what's going to happen with insurrectionists. Are they all going to be let out of jail because this federal law that was used to prosecute them is narrow and not as broad as the U.S. attorney has interpreted it to be? Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, ma.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 15.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
We are back, and we are talking about our very active U.S. Supreme Court. And in addition to that abortion pill case in this term, the justices will also hear a case brought by defendant Joseph Fisher. Fisher is seeking to dismiss a charge against him, accusing him of obstructing an official proceeding, namely the certification by Congress of President Joe Biden's election victory, which was disrupted by a mob of Trump supporters. Now, there are two other January 6 defendants, Edward Lang and Garrett Miller, who brought similar appeals, and the outcome of the Fisher case will obviously have an impact as it relates to those two cases as well. Now, the significant thing is that Trump has been charged with the same offense as well as others in his federal election interference case. And the Supreme Court's decision in Fisher can impact what is going to happen in the special counsel's case against Donald Trump. Now, it's going to take months for the justices to hear oral arguments and issue a ruling sometime during the court's current 9-month term, which ends in June. We know, Professor Armstrong, that Trump's lawyers are going to try to use the Supreme Court's involvement as an opportunity to delay his election interference trial, which had been scheduled to start in March. And the Judge Chutkan, has already said that that trial will not go forward until there is a decision made by the Supreme Court. But let's go back to Fisher and his claim that he was wrongfully prosecuted under this federal criminal code, and the code at issue is 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, which criminalizes any effort to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceedings. Conviction can result in a prison sentence of up to 20 years. Talk to us about 18 U.S.C. 1512.
So this is one of the provisions in the Sarbanes-Oxley legislation that was enacted with respect to the Enron case, and has been used primarily with respect to evidence and destroying evidence and otherwise interfering with these investigations that are being conducted by the federal government or these cases. So one of the questions is the insurrection an attempt to interfere with a government proceeding that's within the scope of this law? And the argument is one that is actually somewhat plausible, given the reasons that the law was enacted, and this being a very different situation. One of the requirements is it being a corrupt attempt to interfere. And that's probably not the case for most of the insurrectionists, though I think if you were talking about applying it to Donald Trump, it would certainly involve corruption. So this is a case that might be a little closer, but it would be dropping one charge and not necessarily causing cases to be thrown out.
But wait a minute, it would be dropping one charge against Donald Trump, but what about Fisher and the hundreds of others that have been prosecuted for the insurrection? Was this same statute used for those prosecutions, and what impact would it have on all those people who have been convicted?
Well, it would depend on what they were convicted of, and it could certainly affect their term. But generally, people were charged with more than one crime. And so what I'm saying is, if you drop a crime or a charge during the prosecution, that doesn't make the case disappear. There's still the remaining charges. And so this would be perhaps one part of the case, but not the entire case for most of these individuals. As for people who've been convicted under it already, that's a more complicated question in terms of it affecting the sentences that they've received.
I know the Justice Department has said that even if the Supreme Court is taking this case up, it's too early for them to intervene because none of the defendants have yet gone to trial on the obstruction charge. Do you agree with that position, or do you think the government should be trying to intervene?
Well, I think that you can charge a statute with being unconstitutionally applied or being a misinterpretation of the law, even while the case is ongoing. And so I'm not sure exactly what the approach of the the defendants in this case, who are charging the charges, with respect to being able to carry on. It wouldn't be the entire case, is what I'm saying, because generally it's more than one charge.
Okay, and so you don't think that even if the Supreme Court rules that this particular Sarbanes-Oxley inspired federal rule has been applied too broadly in these insurrection cases, that means we're going to have to open up jails and let all the insurrectionists out?
I doubt it very seriously. I mean, they'll, again, be able to have it their sentences examined. And unless this was the only charge that they were convicted under, they're still convicted of other charges.
But what happens with Trump? So Judge Chutkan, who had this case set for March, has said, look, I need to put a pause because I need the court. There's this decision, but there's also the Supreme Court petition filed by special counsel asking the Supreme Court to jump in and decide whether Donald Trump has immunity from prosecution, because we know he filed a motion with Judge Chutkan at the district court level. She said, absolutely not. You are not immune from prosecution because of your conduct. He then appealed to the Circuit Court of Appeals. We don't have a decision from that circuit court. What's going to happen with the Supreme Court now that that the special counsel kind of jumped over the appellate court and says, look, let's stop wasting time. Let's go straight to the Supreme Court. What do you expect happens in that case?
Well, I don't think that the Supreme Court has actually ever had a case where a sitting president has been tried. So this is a whole new world, and it's a question and part of separation of powers because you have the both the judicial and the executive branch involved in this conflict. And in previous cases, like when the Clinton versus Jones case was being heard, that was a civil case, but the court allowed the case to proceed because it didn't think that there would be a violation of separation of powers. In this particular case, Donald Trump's assertion of presidential immunity for criminal actions that don't really have anything to do with his discharge of his duties, I think is something that is just not going to appeal to a court in terms of rule of law and the idea that the president himself is subject to the laws of the country. So it's a new case in terms of it being a criminal issue, but this is like, the facts are so terrible.
So you can't really imagine a scenario under which the court says absolute blanket presidential immunity, every criminal prosecution against Donald Trump stops today.
I can't. I mean, and I'm not naive perhaps, but I just don't think that a court would countenance what he's doing with the executive power.
Yeah, would be quite an expansive interpretation of executive power. And it would make true Donald Trump's statement that he could literally shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not suffer any consequences. It really would send a message that presidents are above the law and that presidents can pretty much do whatever and be immune from criminal prosecution. I so hope that we are both right. We know we have a 6-3 majority conservative court, and we know we have jurists on that court, Clarence Thomas included, that have been incredibly favorable to Trump and have gone out of their way, including, distorting precedent and twisting, legal precedent in order to find in ways that favor him. And when we come forward, we're going to talk about voting rights. That's another case that the Supreme Court has weighed in on in a way that could mean that Republicans are given a green light to cheat in upcoming elections. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials,
We are back, and we've talked about two cases that the Supreme Court decided to take up. There is another significant case that the Supreme Court on Tuesday declined to intervene in, and it's a dispute over a Republican-drawn commissioner's map in Galveston County, Texas. Now, this case is significant because we've seen the landmark Voting Rights Act under attack over the last decade or so. The court's decision in terms of not taking up this case means that the county commissioner's court map that a federal judge already ruled violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act will remain in effect while a federal appeals court reviews the judge's decision next year. So, Professor Armstrong, again, a significant case. And what does this tell you about the viability going forward of the Voting Rights Act? It seems like, it's been constantly under attack. And yet again, a district judge saying, hey, this map violates the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, but it's okay, it can remain in effect.
Yeah, well, this is another situation where you have the court dealing with states versus the federal government. And the court, as you mentioned, really drew back the Voting Rights Act's coverage in the Shelby County case about a decade ago. And by not preventing the gerrymandering from operating in the next election, which is what the court had, the lower court had decided that a different map had to apply. So, what you have is this consistent taking away the vote by the Republican Party from people of color, because the argument against the districts was it tore up or divided the black and brown districts that had existed prior to this gerrymandered map. So this is just so huge in not allowing there to be some kind of remedy for the charge of discrimination, the finding really. And it really does not bode well for the elections in 2024 because we're seeing so much gerrymandering by the Republican Party, and they say it's on the basis of party, but they conflate Black votes with Democrats.
Yeah, and talk to us about this determination by the court that because this wasn't a single minority district, that somehow, was the motivating factor in the decision here, that the district was a minority district when you combine the number of Black voters with the Latino voters. And they said that that's not what the Voting Rights Act had in mind, that the Voting Rights Act, had in mind single minority districts, meaning a single district of Black folks or a single district of, Latino voters. What do you make of that argument?
Well, it's kind of confusing to me because it was a single district, and now it's been divided into several districts, and it's been done under this Republican gerrymandering. And so to say that this doesn't apply because it's now different districts is kind of ingenuous because it was a single district in the past.
Yeah, what do you think happens with the Voting Rights Act? There was another case decided essentially saying that individuals, civil rights groups can't bring Voting Rights Act's violation lawsuits, that only governmental entities can do so. That would be a major blow to the Voting Rights Act, because we know it is those groups like the NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, and others that have challenged these gerrymandered maps under the Voting Rights Act. I think we're having some problems with your audio, Professor.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, this would just have a big impact on a lot of different groups because it could be applied to other legislation. And so there's that concept of standing, of being able to argue in court. And the court has previously allowed groups whose members are affected to argue. Well, this case is maybe turning that over on its head, and that would be a disaster because oftentimes groups are formed in order to pursue this kind of this kind of litigation by kind of combining the concerns of a number of people who are affected. So if this whole thing about standing is upheld, it's really a disaster for civil rights, I think.
And I think this just shows us how important elections are. And oftentimes people, Professor, don't think about judges, right? They don't think about the appointments of judges. They don't think that, if they're not involved in a court case, they don't probably think that judges have anything to do with their lives, their daily lives. And obviously that's far from the truth. Judges can make decisions and do make decisions that impact all of our daily lives. Like all of us know a young woman that might find herself raped or may find herself sexually assaulted or just may find herself, in a medical situation where she needs to have an abortion. So the laws around abortion and interpreted by judges should make all of us interested in being very aware of who we elect, and particularly when you talk about presidents, because it's presidents that are going to make appointments to our U.S. Supreme Court. And Donald Trump, in a remarkable turn of events, had not one, not two, but three Supreme Court appointments. And if he is elected again, it is highly likely that he could get one and possibly two other appointments to that court. I mean, we in theory could end up with an 8-1, 7-2 conservative court. And we know these are lifetime appointments, both at the federal district level, at the federal appeals level, and obviously at the U.S. Supreme Court level. We know Supreme Court justices have been under fire this year because of their violations of ethics, the expensive gifts and trips and private jets that they have taken from billionaires who have interest before the court. So we have a judicial system at the Supreme Court level that is basically unpoliced. And we have Republican presidents like Donald Trump making appointments to the court, and courts making decisions that will have a significant impact on our lives, not just for one decade, but for decades to come. So these cases, if you've ever wondered about why elections matter, what the Supreme Court is going to be taking up next year is, again, Exhibit A as to why elections matter. Thank you so much, Professor Armstrong, for joining me and helping us make sense of all of these very important legal cases. We will continue to watch them, so watch this space. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't touch that dial. Thank you so much.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to the Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m.